All right, what is up, folks? So I'm back here with some more black pilled content, right? So for this video, I'm going to discuss the topic of why young women being raised in single mother homes, they have no chance. I'm not saying that, they can't succeed in life, but those are the exceptions, right? It's the same thing with young men, right? I understand, obviously, someone like LeBron James. LeBron James grew out without a father, right? But at the end of the day, there's only one LeBron James. Those are the exceptions. Those are not the general population. And I showed this to you guys a few videos back. It's very simple, right? So look at me right now, right? I'm standing on 2 feet, right? Anybody can stand on 2 feet. You can do this all day, right? Unless you're morbidly obese, like one of those people on my 600-pound life. What happens, if I remove my foot? What happens, if I do this? Just like that. How long can you stand like this? See, I'm already wobbly. Yeah, so you guys can see, right? That's how difficult it is, right? That's what happens when you break up the nuclear family. Now, at the very least, for a man, right? I did mention before, so I grew up without a father. I grew up without a mother, right? At least for a man, right? So your biological clock is not really that important, right? The most important thing for a man is your financial clock. Although, yes, some modern women, they say they understand that. But, if they see a 60-year-old guy with an 18-year-old girl, they will absolutely lose their mind. So what I mean by this is that, if a guy has had a really rough childhood, right? It's been through all kinds of trauma, possibly, running away from home, dropping out of school, suicide attempt, smoking cigarettes, getting addicted to hardcore drugs, doing cocaine, doing heroin. But let's say at some point, let's say when this guy is 30 or 32 or 34, he decides that, his life is heading towards a dead end and he needs to turn his life around. Then he still has the opportunity. But unfortunately for a woman, right, every single woman out there, it doesn't matter how much they argue, right? It doesn't matter how much they lose their mind. And when they see a much older guy with a much younger woman, they know that, as a 30 or 35 or 40-year-old woman, there's no way they can compete with, 18 or 22 or 24 years old woman. So, every single woman, doesn't matter what your ethnic background is, doesn't matter which part of the world you live in, right? Every single one of them has a biological clock, right? What do men look for in a woman when they're looking for a wife, right? So they're looking for youth, they're looking for beauty, and they're looking for purity. So, let's say, if you're a woman who has had an extremely rough upbringing, right? And, you got all kinds of messed up. Let's say if you got addicted to hardcore drugs, you dropped out of school, you lived on the streets. And let's say if you even worked part-time as a stripper or prostitute. And let's say if you want to turn your life around when you're 30, 32, 34, unfortunately, it's going to be too late. Now, I'm going to bring back a member of my family back into the picture. So I understand I already uploaded a 43-minute video, but, I've left out so much detail. I really do come from one of the most dysfunctional families in this world. So in order to help you guys visualize, I've basically just draw some arrows on the board. So let me talk about a couple of people. So obviously there's me. I've talked a lot about my mom. So this person's my mom's youngest brother. So yeah, he actually went to jail for 8 years. He was, I believe it was something drug related. He was basically the helper. He wasn't the big shot, because in China, if you're caught with drug trafficking, it's a death sentence. That's why China doesn't have a drug problem. So I believe he was trying to help his boss smuggling drugs into Southeast Asia. Everybody thought he was dead. It turns out, it turned out he was in jail the whole time. And yes, I did mention before, his girlfriend recently just got murdered. Yeah, all kinds of crazy stuff. Yeah, all of this happened in China. So I'm going to talk about his first wife, because, all the divorces in my family. So this will be my aunt, I guess. So yeah, she's been divorced 3 times. That's why, if you watched my video, I talked about, I believe there are upwards of 70 divorces in my family. I'm really not joking, right? See, this is a major issue of a modern woman, and I'm so sick and tired of my mom and sister and of all of their BS lies, right? I don't care. Look, if you want to file for divorce, go ahead, right? Why do you have to lie about it? So a lot of women worldwide, they have this rule. So I'm going to call it this, right? The 1, 2, 3 rule. And, the divorce statistics are real, right? In China, the divorce rate is about 50%. And the reason why it's so high is because a lot of Chinese women has had 2nd, 3rd, and 4th divorces, right? So, and every time you ask these modern Chinese women, what do I mean by the 1, 2, 3, right? You ask them, okay, so you've been divorced. How many times have you been married, right? The answer is always 1. like someone like my mom who is about to be divorced for the seventh time, you got to be honest with yourself. Every time she goes out to meet her friends, or let's say if you're visiting a distant family relative, she always tells me to lie alongside with her. We always have to get our stories straight. So every time she goes out there, when she's telling her stories, she's always saying that she's a victim and she has only been divorced once. Even though I have an older half sister, we have a different dad, and she keeps fabricating all of these stories to tell everybody that oh, she's only been married once. And actually, after her first marriage, she's been single all of these years because she was victim, and she's so depressed that she actually can't bring herself to date anybody. What a load of BS. I'm just so sick and tired of it. So that's the one rule. And what is the two rule, right? If you ask some of these younger Chinese women who has never been married, you ask them how many relationships they have been in, and the answer is always two maximum, right? It's either one or two. Sometimes these women, they could be in 5, 8, 15, 20 relationships, but the answer is always two. And the three is, the body count. So many women, they're so ashamed about it, right? To all the women saying that, your body count doesn't matter. Why do you have to lie about it, right? So every time you ask these young modern women, they either say that, they're a virgin, or, their body count is 1 or 2 or 3 maximum. That's what I mean, the 1, 2, 3 rule. So yeah, let's bring the topic back to this aunt, right? I have not seen her for 15 years. It wasn't until last December I traveled back to northeastern China to the Liaoning province. That's when I finally got to meet her again. I do have to say, right, she looks completely different. I can barely recognize her. Just a lot of smoking, a lot of drinking, a lot of gambling, and she has put on a lot of weight. She has even suffered from a stroke, unfortunately. But that's when I found out, through her, it was her daughter. So this will be my younger cousin. She's 4 years younger than me. And yeah, she just not recently, she moved to Canada 2 years ago. So, I did mention before, she was doing this online streaming chat room thing, and she's been very successful. So I was told that she's making this much. 100,000 yuan a month. Yeah, or if you convert this to US dollars, yeah, 13,700 USD a month. Living in China, there is an outrageous sum of money. So I'm talking about her mom, right? So this is my aunt. I always thought, she was kind of diabolical. She was absolutely insane. I mean, her husband, my uncle, was crazy too. Obviously, he went to jail for 8 years. Now, I've only found out very, very recently, right? It was only during my trip to China during December, I finally found out about her full story. Then my perspective on everything in life has changed, everything about my family. I only found out, the reason why she was always so crazy, by the way, she's over 50 now, is because she doesn't know who her parents are. She was abandoned in a basket by the side of the road, and she was very, very fortunate that it was her adopted parents who basically picked her up by the side of the road. How did this happen? Well, so she was born in 1973. 1973. So what was happening during 1973? Well, this story is not related to the Cultural Revolution. So China has had the one-child policy for 35 years between 1980 to 2015. So, but before that, 10 years before that, in the 1970s, right, for 10 years, China has already had a two-child policy. So from what I understand is that her biological parents, I believe what happened was they already had a son. And because of China's two-child policy during the 1970s, they did not want a daughter for their second child. They wanted 2 sons. So, and obviously what happened was, when she was born in 73, her parents decided that, they don't want a daughter. So they just abandoned her by the side of the road. They left her to die. I mean, what a sick and disgusting world that we live in, right? Especially, I've talked about this crisis of these excess and Chinese and Indian men. Like, what the hell is wrong with you guys, man? Sometimes I think humanity deserves to go extinct. What do you think happens, when every single Chinese or Indian couple, they're celebrating the birth of their son, like they've just won the lottery. They're like, oh my God, yes, we're going to have a son, we're going to have a son, we're going to have a son. When they found out they're going to have a daughter, either they take their wife to the abortion clinic, or they just decided to abandon their daughter by the side of the road, or they commit child infanticide. Man, this is why so many young Asian men and Indian men are struggling, because there are way too many Asian and Indian men. There's a massive crisis of excess men in so many countries. So yeah, I was absolutely shocked and absolutely disgusted when I found out about the story. And I realized, all of this, it really wasn't her fault. She wasn't really given a chance at life. I understand, obviously, she was picked up by her adopted parents, but still, she must have gone through so much childhood trauma growing up. That's why she's acting so crazy all the time. That's what led to her 3 divorces. I mean, the answer is very, very obvious. And if you guys want to look at all the current modern women that's on OnlyFans, that's working at the strip clubs, that's working as prostitutes, that's dropping out of school, that's hooked onto hardcore drugs, that's either currently in jail or they're under house arrest, just ask all of these women a very, very simple question. So just ask these women, do you have a good relationship with your father? Yeah, that's it. There's your answer to all of the problems in your society. I mean, for the guys out there, let's say for the future, you still want to be in a long-term committed relationship, and if you still want to get married, you still want to have children to continue your bloodline. Yeah, when you're searching for your partner, when you're searching for your soulmate, it's very, very important, I think, to ask about her childhood, her upbringing. Did she grow up in a normal, functioning nuclear family? Because if she haven't, yeah, you're going to have all kinds of problems down the road. But perhaps just something positive. I did mention my mom, who, obviously she has had a lot of divorces. Her first divorce was 1989. So in 1989, my mom was 28 years old. By the way, she was the one who filed for divorce. I did mention before, in the city that my mom grew up in, of 450,000 people, she was actually married to the richest guy in the county. Up until when she was 28, she never actually had to work. All she had to do was sit at home and look pretty. She was his trophy wife. But unfortunately, I did mention before, just like my grandmother, my mom is just extremely alpha. It's her way or the highway. Their marriage was extremely toxic, extremely abusive. They were just constantly fighting every single day, like tooth to nail. And after 8 years, it turned out to be a complete disaster. Like, what more do women want, right? You're married to a guy in a city of 450,000 people. He was the richest guy. He was the top dog, right? He's the top 1%, but you're still not happy. You still have to fight this guy every single day. But everything for my mom, ever since she filed for her first divorce at the age of 28, everything has gone straight downhill. And my mom's mental health and her physical health has completely deteriorated. And when I was back in China visiting my mom, unfortunately, she was hospitalized for 2 weeks. Unfortunately, I don't think she has got much longer to live because she's already in the early stages of dementia, and most of her hair has already fallen out. But now I look at this aunt, right? She lived a life of, misery and suffering, right? But at the very least, she's over 50 now. She's 52. I know China just raised the retirement age for both man and woman by 5 years, but she was lucky. She's just missed the raising of the retirement age. So she started collecting her pension just 2 years ago at the age of 50. So, at least, she has some kind of security. And when her adopted parents passed away, they left behind her 2 houses. So now, yeah, she owns 2 homes and she has a pension. And now her daughter, who is making a lot of money, right? She's making 100,000 yuan a month. From what I've been told is that her daughter is wiring money back to her mom. I heard she's getting something like 4,000 to 5,000 yuan a month, which, in the small county that she's living in, that is a monumental sum of money. Plus, she doesn't have to pay rent or mortgage or anything, right? She already has 2 houses and she's married again to her 4th husband. Yeah, I mean, if you guys are wondering why, how these Chinese women in my family, how they can afford to get married and divorced and married and divorced again, is because, yeah, dating is almost impossible for men in China. The excess man crisis is a huge problem, right? Even the bottom of the barrel woman, even the zeros and the ones and twos, right? They can all find the Chinese simps to get married again and again and again. So, maybe God is real at the end of the day if that's what you believe in, right? Maybe we're all living in God's simulation. That's a very important topic. I will be coming back to the topic for future videos. Maybe when God was simulating this world, right? He decided that, my mom, for the first 28 years of her life, she was going to live the life of a princess, of a queen, and she's going to live a life of luxury. All she had to do was sit there and look pretty and to be some rich guy's trophy wife, and versus someone like, my aunt her entire childhood into her early adult years has been nothing but pain and misery and suffering. But now she's in her 50s, right? Her daughter is extremely successful. She's old enough to collect her pension, and her adopted parents left her 2 houses, and she still has a 4th husband. I believe that he's giving half of his paycheck to her for her to go shopping. So yeah, the second half of her life isn't going to be so bad. So, maybe God is fair after all, right? So if you grew up extremely privileged, be prepared. I think, at some point, maybe after you turn 35 or 40, you have to be prepared for your second half of your life to be extremely rough. But, if your childhood was full of pain, misery, and suffering, then perhaps at some point in your life, maybe when you're 35 or 40 or 45, everything is going to be turning around for you. I will be coming back to this topic.